I'm Greg DePalma. You're listening to Andrea Leanne's Australian Open Shot Clock for this Monday, the 22nd of January, 2018 on the Prime Sports Radio Network with PSN tennis editor and former top 15 player in the world, Andrea Leanne. On today's report, we'll recap fourth-round action from the Australian Open, including a pair of huge upsets last night on the men's side with six-time champ Novak Djokovic going down to next-gen champ Young Chung, while American long shot appropriately named Tennis is still alive and kicking. As Andrea Leanne's Australian Open Shot Clock on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. Is in bloom, the transmissions will resume. Now try to push, try to keep us all down. All right, Andrea, on Saturday's show, we told everyone it was time to start giving credit to Chung after his win over Sasha Zverev, and that it was time to pay attention to his game. And now somehow I don't think we're going to need to repeat those sentiments on this show today or any other show in the future.
And number 58 in the world is going to play number 97 in the world for a spot in the semifinal at the Australian Open. But Chung, number 58 in the world, he said because he's had some injuries the last couple of years, had to take 2 or 3 months off each season to really deal with those injuries, and that's why his ranking is that low. But has gotten a lot of confidence, Greg. It's been gradual, incremental steps. And he said that to beat his childhood idol last night, Novak Djokovic, was a dream come true. Of course, he just was so mentally tough out there, to have to win those breakers. Of course, Novak said the first breaker in the first set was the turning point of the match. It just showed how Chung has really matured. He's always been really tough on the baseline, a really tough ground game, but again has shown the maturity and the mental fortitude he needs to beat the big stars like Novak. And it's always a big occasion. Obviously, Greg, Novak was injured. Mm-hmm. He put out there very quickly that the elbow was hurting him. I think it was 9 or so double faults in the match. Show that he had trouble on the serve, did not get the free points. But you know what? You still have to have such fortitude if you're young like Chung and just starting out and just trying to get your first big win on the big stage to reach your first Grand Slam quarterfinal.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to give him a lot of credit for being able to pull that off because Naomi Osaka was not able to do that against Halep, who also was injured. So you always have to it's always still a real test of the mental toughness to see if they can pull it through.
And also because of the fact that, in a couple of sets there, Chung had big leads, and Djokovic did such a great job to come back. And when he came back in both sets, you figured, all right, Chung's in big trouble, especially the first set. You figured after he blew that lead in the first set that Novak would find a way to win that. And when Chung held on to win that in a tiebreaker, you had to go, well, wait a second here. We got a good match going on here.
Well, Chung had more winners than Novak, 47 winners compared to Novak's 36. Novak was 5 for 19 on breakpoint opportunities. So as you said, Novak had lots of opportunities, was all over that serve, but just unable to convert because on the big points, you have to give it to Chung. He held his nerve. He kept his composure. He did not let the occasion get away from him. And you have to also, look, Novak, he actually served about the same speed as Novak. So, Chung has improved that dimension of his game. I do think winning Milan, that next-gen event, was a huge boost. Mm-hmm. But he actually said, in Auckland, every tournament he's played, he has gained in confidence. So it's great to see. It's great for Asia, obviously, Greg, because they need a new star. Nishikori's been out with injury for the last year and a half. He actually is playing in Newport in California in a minor tournament to get some matches in on his comeback trail. But he's got to keep an eye on Chung now because this is really the first Asian player that's come up who has the potential now to be a top 10 player, maybe win a Grand Slam, prior to Kay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you take a look at his matchup in the quarters.
Oh, boy. Was that a match?
Yeah, Tennys Sandgren, who it looked like after Dominic Thiem came out with those big-time backhand winners to help him to win the fourth set tiebreaker that you had to feel, is this it? But no, Tennys Sandgren was the better player.
Well, and Tennys Sandgren was going to be on our program because he was the one who won that wild card to get to the French Open, and he was calling in just as he was leaving for Paris and got his flights mixed up. Yeah, he is someone that's a very interesting character. They questioned him a lot. He's 97 in the world. He's been around, only won two tour matches, and one was a retirement. So has never won a Grand Slam match. Comes in here, wins 4 now, and they said, "How did this happen?" They've been talking about how open the women's draw is. No, anyone can win. Well, now you got 97 in the world playing 58 in the world, and Tennis Sandgren comes out of nowhere. He said he got confidence playing Chung actually in Auckland, and he felt that he could play with Chung, that he was on a par with him, that he really had the game to do it, the big serve. He has that 1-2 punch, he says. And I think that he is being more patient. He's not going for the winner so quickly. He's in better shape, so he can be patient. His poor mom, though, was celebrating watching him at home, and apparently tripped or fell on a pool table or something and cracked a rib.
Yeah.
So she's in bed. She's excited. That's a good way, though, I guess, if you have to crack a rib, celebrating for your son doing so well. But it'll be interesting to see. But can you imagine now? One of these guys is going to get to the semifinal, and that is Roger Federer's half. So this is why when people talk in the beginning of a tournament, Roger is going to have to play Novak. You just never know these days, because I personally think the men's draw is just as open as the women's.
And Chung obviously has had a tougher road to get there by having to beat Sasha, then Novak, as opposed to tennis, because, Thiem was not on top of his game, and Stan wasn't exactly, healthy. But, it's one match, and maybe the fact that you don't have to play those really big-time opponents one after another, maybe that'll help you. Even though Chung is a heavy favorite in this match, what kind of a chance do you give tennis?
Well, I think actually tennis has a great chance. It's a very fast court. He will be playing probably on labor. And I think that he has a lot of confidence. Also, I think he has confidence in his physical fitness. That was a long match against Thiem. Thiem's a really physical player himself, and you have to work hard. And so I give tennis a chance. How can you not at this point?
Sure.
When he's on a roll, he has the confidence. He's got the mojo behind him. Certainly has a chance. I think Chung, though, really wants it too. So, I have to give the nod to Chung on that one. But it was interesting because you mentioned how he beat Sasha Zverev, and Sasha really did not play up to form. And there was Sasha out there with Roger, and Roger invited him to come out, practice with him, and really took him under his wing a little bit with a conversation afterwards to try and give him some mentoring, some advice. And I always love to see that, Greg, and this is so typical of Roger. He is just such a good leader, a good role model. And, he knows Sasha was down. He knew it was a bad loss. He knew he was had a lot of confusion as to where to go and why he isn't winning these matches in Grand Slams. And so it was great to see Roger take him under his wing and really give him some, positive feedback on his direction forward, because these are the guys we're going to need in the future. And I think it's great for Roger in the middle of the tournament to take the time to do that and think about others, other than the fact, obviously he doesn't have to worry about facing Sasha at that point.
Sure.
But I think also when the guy Roger just beat last night, he had him in Switzerland, invited him there, played a 3 out of 5 set match with him. So Roger is really, doing a lot of other things too, and mentoring these younger guys coming up that I think is so important and has been so crucial for this next young group.
Yeah, Fucsovics actually gave him a good 3-set match, especially the first 2 sets. They were very competitive for Roger. He's been steaming by everybody, and even though he didn't lose a set, it was a competitive couple of sets. But look, he doesn't have to face Del Potro. He doesn't have to face Goffin. He's going to face a guy, Thomas Berdych, who he has owned. We talked about it a couple of days ago, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is the type of setting that we can assume that Thomas Berdych is going to go ahead and pull off the upset.
Well, Berdych, had some back injuries at the end of last year, so that hampered him a bit. He says he's over it. He's playing well. I think he looks 100% to me. He looks in very good shape. He had match points against Roger in Miami. So Roger knows Thomas is, really experienced, very strong mentally, has an all-court game, and can be dangerous. And so I think this is going to be a completely different match for Roger. He's going to have to put on his different hat. He's going to have to be really, really aware and alert as to what Berdych is doing. But I agree with you. Roger has always had a psychological edge over Berdych. Yes, he's taken a couple losses to Berdych, but he really, I think at this point in this type of occasion, should be able to come through. Now, we will say Roger did give a very flat performance at the ATP final. final. So he is capable of that. He has not been tested at all in this tournament. He really has flown by. And sometimes that, that can be good or bad, Greg. Sometimes you do want to be tested.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do want to have to be pushed to play your best tennis. Hasn't happened yet for Roger. So Berdych, I think, will do that. And I think he is going to test Roger. He is going to make him play his best tennis to win. And I think it's going to be up to Roger, though, to be the faster, take the initiative, and really control the tempo and get on top of Berdych very quickly in the beginning.
And we'll see whether Berdych can pull off the upset. Of course, if he's, I'm sure he's feeling, hey, if I can just beat him just one time in this type of a situation, I think he's lost to him 8 straight times. If I could beat him just one time before he retires again, this is the time.
That's what Tommy Haas said last year, right? When he beat him in Germany.
Yeah, right. Well, this is the
time.
Everyone
wants to win over Roger before they retire. But no, I think that Berdych also, people really wrote him off.
Yeah, sure.
They had all these issues about who was coaching him. And I thought that was another interesting part Roger said. We're going to talk about the Nick Dimitrov match, Kyrgios. And he said that, they asked him about coaching and how Nick Kyrgios doesn't have a coach and how horrible is this and important. And Roger says, yeah, actually, I think he does have a coach. And he said coaches can take on many roles. And we've discussed this. When you say, oh, someone doesn't have a coach or they don't have the right coach, well, it depends on the needs of the player. Sometimes it can be like a manager who does all the off-court stuff. Yes, sometimes it is about strategy and tactics, as he said it is with Ljubicic and him. He said Ljubicic is very much an on-court strategist. He really helps them, get together the game plan, make sure that he's prepared in training and practice to play that game plan. So Ljubicic is a very intellectual guy, and he knows how to prepare Roger well for each match. He knows the opponents. He can dissect their games. He can really, point out the weaknesses and strengths so that Roger knows exactly what he's doing on court. But that's the traditional coach. That is not really what we're seeing a lot on tour. We're seeing a non-traditional coach where you see someone who is, the guy who's easy to hang out with, the guy who's easy to travel with, the guy that can get the racket strung, who's a good manager of the off-court stuff. So there are a lot of different, there's an emotional component sometimes to have someone who's just a cheerleader, who's supportive, who can get the player push the right buttons to get the player to play their best tennis. So it takes on different roles. And as Roger said, look, Nick has plenty of people in his box. And he has plenty of people serving lots of different roles there. And I agree. I don't think Nick needs a official coach right now. I actually think Nick is a very intelligent guy, one of the smartest guys on tour, one of the smartest players, and he has the intelligence to know how to dissect his opponent, the weaknesses and the strengths, and how to really execute his game to take advantage of that. And so that's not the part I think Nick needs right now. And I also don't think, I think when Nick hears the word coach, it's like, you do as I say. And I don't think anyone should ever tell Nick Kyrgios what to do. That's the kiss of death. The answers must come from him, and he must make those decisions. So it'll be interesting because, as you mentioned, Greg, he lost to Dimitrov, but it was a great match.
Yes, it was a great match, and even though there were a couple of instances that flew by really fast, where it looked like, the old Nick might be coming back. He didn't. The old Nick did not come back. He hung in there, and he just got beat by a better player because Dimitrov, we had not seen this play from him in this tournament yet. We knew it was there, and when he needed to up his game, Grigor did it on the biggest stage possible against a player that we all thought was probably going to beat him.
Well, we finally saw the hunger in Dimitrov. He went and he grabbed the match. This is what, it's so funny because, as I mentioned, Nick is so intelligent. He reads people well. He knows how to push their buttons. And when they shook hands at the match, after the match, Nick said, believe in yourself. And he just hit the nail on the head. Belief was the issue with Grigor. Did he believe he deserved to win? Does he believe he deserves a Grand Slam title? Because he's always played the bridesmaid in all roles of his life. So this time we saw, yes, he got up there, he grabbed it. He did not get, ruffled by Nick's aces and his big shots and all the crowd attention. He stayed very calm, composed. He had his head down, the game face on, and he stuck to the game plan. And, of course, Nick would turn to his box and, wanted encouragement and kept, asking them for more and more encouragement. And he had the full box there, all the guys and his mom, getting up on their feet every other point. And there was Denny Belvedere for Grigor, the one guy there, making sure the rackets were being strung during the match and getting them out to Grigor and, standing up. And you had the one poor guy there cheering for Grigor, but that's all it took. That's all it took because Grigor had the game plan. He stuck to it. As we've mentioned, he's got all the ability, all the game. They call him, baby Fed because he's so similar in style to Federer. And And of course, he had the serve. But that night, Greg, he had the mental consistency. He did not let down on the big points. He went and grabbed them, and that is the difference now. Is that Grigor on those big points is really showing that he is ready for the next stage.
All right. Well, we have still an opportunity now to find out whether or not Grigor can take that next step against the player that he's supposed to beat. See, this is the situation that we had in his previous two matches where he's supposed to beat these players and he struggles. Then he goes up against a guy that all of a sudden now people are expecting him to lose to, and he ups his game. So will he go back to the player, or will there be more pressure when he's in a situation where, okay, I know Kyle Edmund's playing well, but I'm supposed to beat this guy, and then I'll get myself into the semifinals? Will there be that type of undue pressure that he really shouldn't be putting on himself? What do you think? Because Edmund sure is playing well.
I'll tell you why, because this is another difference in the match with Grigor and Nick. I mean, people ask, why did Nick ultimately lose? Look, when you're out there for, 4 sets, 4 hard, rough sets, everyone's in good shape. Nick is probably in the best shape I've ever seen him in, but Grigor's in better shape. And I think that made the difference in the end, is that Grigor had that extra fitness, extra conditioning, and he was still strong in those end points. When we saw Nick had a couple double faults here and there and, was drawn out of court, Grigor had him running all over the place. And, Nick was trying to hit a little bit of two big shots when he was out of position. And that to me showed that he could even be in better shape. And he was just a little bit better conditioned and able to get to those balls, and the arm was just a little bit stronger so it didn't get tired as the match went on. That would have made the difference. But I think that Grigor feels he has done the work. He has done the work. He has paid his dues. No, there's no more of this 10 days off, 5 days on of practice, this kind of erratic training schedule. One thing Danny Belvedere has been able to do is really impress upon him how important it is to be consistent in your training, to be a real professional, to approach it in a professional way. And I think now Grigor feels, you know what, I have done that. I've done everything asked of me. I have put in the time. I am in the best condition in my entire life, physically and mentally. And so I think that even though these occasions sometimes are new to him or big to him, I think now he's got the experience and he's done the homework where he feels he believes it and earns it.
All right, now I don't expect Dimitrov to lose to Edmund this go around, but I will say this, and we talked about it before the tournament began. Kyle Edmund is starting to play good tennis, and this is somebody to now really start keeping an eye on. This is another good young player to watch.
Yeah, and the only other British player other than Andy Murray who's reached the quarterfinal since John Lloyd back in the 90s. So, obviously England very happy to have Kyle Edmund there with Andy out injured, of course. And so I think there's a lot of expectation on him. As you said, it's increased. The goals have increased with him. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that. I remember watching him in Miami against Jared Donaldson, where he was clearly in control of the match and lost the match. And then, of course, there was the match with Jack Sock and Bursey, of course, where he was also in control and let it go. So it'll be interesting to see if Kyle Edmund can hang on to that mental edge, and if he gets into control, can he maintain that lead, maintain the momentum, or is he going to have a letdown? And to me, it's all about the mental with him. I think he also is in very good shape. Look, to beat the guys he's beaten to get to the second week, you have to be in good shape. And so I think it'll be interesting. It'll be a different type of match, but I think it'll be contrast a little bit more in style. It'll be a more physical match. We're going to see a lot of physicality out there, but I think it'll be a good one. I still give the nod, though, to Grigor.
Yeah. And then if Grigor is able to win, he might be taking on Rafa in the semifinals. Imagine if he's got to actually beat Rafa and Roger to win the Australian Open.
Well, he has done that, though. He has done that before. So he's been able to beat both of them. Rafa at least. He's beaten Rafa. He had a tough match with Rafa there last year.
Yeah.
Of course, we said it was such a high-quality match.
Yep.
I think the biggest thing Grigor has to do is not get ahead of himself.
Yes, true.
You don't want to see a letdown against Edmund. You want to see him play the same type of tennis. And so for him right now, it's just one match at a time. And let's see what happens to Rafa. You never know right now in the men's draw.
That's true.
To me, Rafa looks so tough. I mean, these sleeveless shirts was the best thing Nike ever did for him because his arms are so huge. I mean, he is done such incredible training. The muscle in his arms and his upper torso. I've never seen that type of definition in any other player in the draw. And he obviously is in phenomenal shape. And it's so funny because, of course, last year when everyone was making such a big deal about Roger coming over on the backhand and being more aggressive and playing more offensive tennis, there was a feeling, oh, Rafa has to do the same thing and he has to start taking the ball on the rise more and learning how to hit flat. Well, there's Rafa, camped out behind the baseline, 10 feet, 10 feet, digging them out with this heavy offensive topspin. And he still is controlling the points. He still is a force out there. But he's gone back to his old style, Greg. I mean, he's gone back to what makes him happy, the way he wins. And that's really what it's about. I think after trying to do all these things, I remember watching him at a training session in Miami at the Miami Open. And Tony was out there, his uncle Tony, and Carlos Moya was there. And they were trying so hard to teach him the technique to taking the ball early and hitting it flat. And he just could not get it. And you could see the wrist was starting to kind of bother him trying to do this. And, it just became so uncomfortable that Carlos finally went to the other side of the court and Tony just went to the corner and Tony just said, play your game. And so he went to the clay, he won everything, won the French, and he never looked back and has gone back to playing his style of tennis, his brand of tennis. And he's going to stick with that because that's what makes him confident. And I think that's the key right now for Rafa is confidence that he can pull through, that he doesn't have to be in the shadow of Roger, and he can avenge that loss from last year.
And this is probably, I guess you could say this is Rafa's toughest match, including his U.S. Open run. And so far in this Australian Open, the question is what Marin Cilic are we going to get? Because he had a very successful Wimbledon run. He's a Grand Slam winner. That sometimes we forget that. So is Cilic now ready to take that next step? Because guys like Dimitrov looking for his first slam. I mean, Cilic is sitting there with a slam on his resume already, but we've kind of expected more, and now it's time to get more.
Well, Cilic is a smart player. He's a veteran. He's a cagey type of player. He knows how to, get the most out of his game. He knows how to maximize his weapons. And look, he knows Rafa very well. So there's going to be no secrets out there as to what to do. The question is the physicality. As I just mentioned, Rafa can turn a match into a real physical match. And this is where we have to wonder if Cilic can keep up with him. We've seen Cilic really struggle physically in the last year or so. He had all the heroics to get his country to the Davis Cup final, not able to pull through against Argentina. But you could see that, in the last year, physically, Cilic has had some issues. And so I'm not sure if it's heat is supposed to come back in Melbourne. The temperatures are supposed to go up. It'll be interesting to see if Cilic can keep up with Rafa physically, because what Rafa does is he makes the match a real grinder. He's going to grind and move Cilic on that baseline, try to keep him back. The return of serve will be important for Rafa because Cilic has a big first serve, great first serve. And look, it's going to be an interesting contrast in styles. I have to give it to Rafa, though, because Australia, this tournament, the Australian Open, has really become a physical tournament for the players. We hear so much talk about the injuries already in the beginning of the year. And so I think that's because there's a lot of physicality to these 2 weeks with the weather conditions, the court surface, and everything else. So I still give the nod to Rafa.
All right. So, again, those matches, Nadal and Cilic and Dimitrov and Edmund, those will be tonight. Or real early in the morning if you're here on the East Coast.
Poor Americans have to get up at 3 in the morning usually to watch all these matches.
Yeah.
It's, but a tennis channel does tape them, so you can see them on replay when you get up.
Or you have DVR.
Or tape them yourself.
Yeah.
But it's been a challenge on the time change, I know, for some. But boy, I think we're going to have some good matches.
All right, on the women's side, when I looked at the odds just before I came on the air for the Keys-Kerber match, I was a little bit surprised that Keys was a little bit of a dog. Not a lot, but a little bit, because, boy, is she looking so good right now, destroying Garcia. And then Kerber, of course, coming off a very difficult 3-set match. Starting with Kerber, though, because that was the difficult match. I want to ask you about that because the style of play of her opponent Is that something that you can just throw away and say that was just a completely different match? I'm not going to judge Kerber on that match because she's been playing really well, that she goes up against an unorthodox player, and now that she goes up against Keys, who's more in line to the type of player that she's used to playing, I still feel that she's on top of her game and she has a very good chance to win this match.
Well, Sue Shea from Taiwan, she's been around a long time. I've watched her in doubles many times. You know, she was ranked number one in the world in doubles with Peng Shuai. They won Wimbledon, they won the French, they won the WTA finals. And we've talked about how important it is to play doubles because doubles helps you build your repertoire. It helps you develop, strokes you would not otherwise develop. And of course, Shuai has such incredible, as you mentioned, incredible touch, incredible eye, hand, and shot selection. But she's smart. And the reason she gave Kerber a run for her money is she knew what shot to play, but she had an incredible will out there to play it. And that's where people underestimate Shuai. They don't realize how tough mentally she really is. Yes, she's fast. Yes, she's got great racket skill. And people feel that's very unorthodox, so they don't see a lot of it, Greg. They don't see someone trying to win on touch and precision and placement rather than the flat, hard shots. You know, we've heard so much talk about all these players wanting to hit hard and flat, and trying to be offensive. And that is not the only way to be aggressive. There are other ways to be aggressive. There are other ways to control the point. And Shuai really showed that yesterday. We saw it a lot with Hingis. I remember Martina Hingis doing it so well. Radwanska in her best days did it as well when she was number 2 in the world, able to really jerk the opponent around, able to find all these incredibly nifty angles all around the court. And it almost looked like Shuai was toying with Kerber in the first set and a half. It was embarrassing. Kerber was embarrassed, I think, herself, because she's a very one-dimensional player. And what has changed about Angie in the last year is the physicality, and that's why she's doing so well in this event. Those legs are back. She is able to run all over the court. Excuse me. And I think that, the key for Angie is still the physicality, is still being able to counterpunch. But she had no answers for Shuai for a set and a half. She had no idea what to do, and she just got lulled into playing Shuai's game. She was hitting she got lulled into these cross-court rallies, and, of course, it almost became an ego battle, quite frankly, Greg, where I could see Angie saying to herself, this 110-pound, veteran opponent, double specialist, is not going to beat me out in these cross-court rallies. What she doesn't realize is, in doubles, that's all you do is cross-court rally.
Sure.
So she was playing someone who was far superior in finding the angles. And as she did, and as she made Angie look a little silly in the beginning, but finally Angie started changing direction on the ball, started doing more with the shots, started hitting down the line, and started serving better and taking advantage of that Sue Shea second serve. You just cannot go 4 for 15 on second serves and not put more pressure on the opponent. So I think that Angie did change her game up, but obviously the most important part was Shuai did get tired. She absolutely ran out of gas. And once she did, that was it. I mean, the match just seemed to unravel. But it was an interesting contrast in styles and an interesting lesson for coaches. This is where I think coaches really need to watch a match like that. I hear so many coaches who want their players to hit hard and flat, be offensive. And that's not the only way to take control of a match. That's not the only way to do it. And when you're 5'6" or smaller, it's not, and you don't have the physical prowess of a Muguruza and a Sharapova or a Serena. You have to find other ways. And Shuai is a good example of that.
Well, maybe Maria should take notice.
No, Maria is over 6 feet tall. She's got the frame. She's got the innate power, like Muguruza, like Serena, like Venus. So that's what she has to use. We just said with Maria, she's got to find, a different gear also. Yeah. So when she's out of position and she can't get to the ball and be in perfect line to hit a winner, that she can have a different gear to put it back, put it into play, and wait until she gets the right shot. So that's a little bit different. But, when you look at some of these other girls who are, like a Halep and other counter punchers who are not as big, you don't have to always hit hard flat. And I personally think the girls these days, the players coming up, really feed off it. They love the pace, and you make them look good. I thought Halep made Lauren Davis look good. I mean, not to take any credit away from Lauren Davis. She played terrific match. I mean, phenomenal, 15-13 in the third. But I felt that Halep made her look good by hitting the hard flat shots in the middle. Luckily for Halep, she changed her tune against Osaka.
All right. Now, Kerber is going to face Keys, who just looks like she is a fine-tuned engine right now. And we kind of thought that she might, she was the favorite to win the U.S. Open at that point in time. And we figured that she was going to get it done, but Sloane beat her, blitzed her. And but here she is in her next big opportunity. And she's steaming through, and now she goes up against Kerber as the slight dog here. So what does Madison have to do to pull off?
Well, it's so interesting because when people always focus on the loss and not the wins, when I look at Madison that U.S. Open, I focus on the fact she came back from 4-2 down the third against Svitolina to win that match. And she dug her way out of a number of other matches as well. Mm-hmm. Yes, she lost to Sloane, and she learned a lot from that. I think it stung. I think it was a bitter pill to take to lose to Sloane. She was the favorite. She had the shots, and she always has had a good success with Sloane in practice as well. So I think that was a tough one on the ego, and I think that really sat with her and encouraged her and motivated her to work very, very hard in the off season, which she did, Greg. 8 weeks. First time she's ever had that type of time to really concentrate just on the tennis. There were no vacations to Mexico. There was no Betty Crocker cupcake making. She really turned the tide really as being a true professional, approached it with total conviction, and I think we're seeing the results of that now. There's been no talk, of course, with the wrist. The wrist seems okay. That was what hampered her in the last year and a half. And I think to see a healthy Madison Keys gives her that confidence on court that she can stay in the point, that she can control it. And I think we're seeing that now. Of course, Lindsay Davenport on the sidelines as the coach is ultimate help. And she has just supported Madison in so many little ways. For instance, the little things, if Madison's watching tennis matches on TV and gets a little nervous, she calls Lindsay. Lindsay says, turn it off. And so it's all these little things when you're young and you're in your early 20s and you're just coming up and trying to get back into the top 10 that really help. And it's really helpful to have that type of coach who has that mindful eye and can help you navigate through it all. We said that the winners would tell the story of that match with Garcia. In fact, it did. Keys 32 winners to Garcia's 9. That really tells the story that Madison, as you said, was in full control of the match, broke for 5 times, 5 out of 8 break point opportunities. And so it really was a unblemished performance. Now the question is, she's going to face a much different battle in Kerber, a completely different battle. They have battled before. I've watched it. It's quite an interesting tango. But I think that for Keys, it's really about playing her game. She cannot worry about what Angie does. She's got to worry about executing. And I think if she executes on the serve, executes off the ground, she has the power and I think at this point the fitness to really do it.
Well, it is going to be a great a great quarterfinal matchups tomorrow night when you get both Kerber and Keys in the one quarterfinal, and then we're going to get Halep and Pliskova in the other quarterfinal. And of course, Pliskova coming up big in her grudge match win over Stricheva. And she lost the first set, tiebreaker, but she just put that beside her and then came back strong, winning the next two. And I'm not sure even some of the people after they probably were worn out watching some of the big matches before that, they might have went to sleep and didn't realize that there was another match to go.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about why they're putting these women's matches on after the men's at night. This has been kind of the trend. They want to put their marquee men's match on for the night crowd to see. Don't want to have it delayed until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Matches start at 7. I don't agree with this at all, by the way. I think it's ridiculous. The women's match, as you know, is usually going to go an hour and a half at the most. Get the women on, get them off, and let the men then have the rest of the night. And, they had Ash Barty playing almost close to midnight. And that was a shame because, of course, she has the hometown crowd. So I don't agree with all this and putting the women on second after the men. The men's a 3 out of 5 match. It can go 4 or 5 hours if it goes the distance. And it's not fair to make the women wait after that. As you mentioned, Pliskova got on. It was a grudge match because, of course, at the end of last year, Pliskova split with her coach, Deva Kocheva, and went and hired behind her back Strikova's coach, Thomas Strupa. And, of course, Strikova was not happy about this at all. They were, they're Fed Cup partners, doubles partners. They won the title together. They've had lots of big moments in their careers together, so they were great, great friends. And this just did not sit well with Strikova at all, and she really let Pliskova know it publicly. And Pliskova did not bat an eye. And this is what I love about the whole Pliskova team. They keep everything private. They keep everything, they round the circle, and they really keep everything close to the vest. They really don't respond, and that just silences the whole story, and it just goes away. And this did. She beat Safarova, another Czech, in the round before Pliskova, so she's had her, round of colleagues in this tournament. This time, I think, ultimately, her serving just was too superior. She had too many big shots, and Strikova did get tired. Strikova is known to be a very cagey competitor. She has an all-court game. She's a real feisty competitor. She will stick into the end, but she's known to play a lot of three-set matches. So this was no surprise. I do think Pliskova was a little nervous in the first set to lose that one in a breaker. I think that she did blink a few times, but she got it back together, and that was what was important. And now, quite frankly, Greg, in facing Halep, it's going to be a question of whether she can really exploit Halep's injury. And people, it's so funny because, Halep beat Osaka very easily. Osaka did not play well at all. This occasion was just really too big for her. She was never really able to capitalize on Halep's, bad left ankle. And I watched Halep in her warm-up beforehand. I watched the whole thing. There is no question she cannot anchor that left foot on the backhand side. And she was not putting pressure on it in the warm-up. She could not run back for an overhead, which makes her really a lame duck at net if she comes in.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that sometimes these things have a reverse effect. And so Simona, who likes to be the counterpuncher and likes the long points and likes to wear down her opponents, was trying to shorten the points against Osaka and was going for a lot more. She had 22 winners, but she also had 17 unforced errors, which is a lot for Simona Halep. Osaka, though, had 25 unforced errors, and we said that the unforced errors from Osaka would tell the match, and sure it did. She just made too many errors, was not able to really put the ball on the court when she needed to. She's a very powerful player. She's a very fresh player. It's nice to have a new face on tour, and she'll be around for a while. But she's working with Sasha Bajan, and she needs a coach. She really needs a coach to really help her make the improvements, because I don't think this is someone who can do it on her own as she thinks she can. So it'll be interesting, because I watched her train at the Everett Academy before she went to Melbourne. And I think Sasha's doing his best to try and up the workouts, make them a little bit tougher, make her work a little bit harder, move a little bit more. But I think it's going to take time to get her to that point. So it was interesting to see. But with Halep Pliskova, they've battled before, Greg. They've battled before. Halep usually comes up on the upper end because she just moves too well. But without that, it'll be interesting to see, how Pliskova takes advantage of it or not.
All right, and again, that those matches will be tomorrow night, but for tonight, early in the morning on Tuesday morning, we're gonna get to see Wozniacki and Svitolina take the court. Will they be able to face each other in the semifinals? First, start with Wozniacki and her matchup with Navarro, who gutted it out, and it looked like Kontavet was going to beat her, and she was up. Kontavet was up 4-1 after winning the first set and the second set.
Well, Kontavet should have won the match against Suarez Navarro, and I think Caroline would have been a little bit happier to face her instead of Suarez Navarro, who has beat her. I watched Suarez Navarro beat her in Madrid last year, and it's a much tougher match for Caroline, quite frankly. Kontavet was up, as you said, up a set in 2 breaks and could not put the match away. And she's a big hitter, likes to go for her shots, and just fell apart. There we see youth again. A new player, a young player on tour, and has a lot of lessons to learn on how to put a match away. But you have to credit Suarez Navarro because she is a tough player, Greg. I watched her play Venus at the Open last year. She can play defense. She can play offense. She was a former top 10 player, so she's been up there. She knows what it takes. And I think she's going to be very tough for Caroline to beat because she does everything Caroline does, but I think a little bit better. And so it's going to be up to Caroline to just have that grit, have that resolve, and try and be a little bit offensive too. And that doesn't necessarily mean hitting hard and flat, because I think Suarez-Navarro, as we saw with Kontaveit, loves pace, feeds off pace, isn't fazed by it at all. But she has a lot of strokes. She's got that one-handed backhand. She can hit the slices. What Caroline's going to have to do is take advantage of her serve, and she's going to have to serve well herself. And those are the two key points that are in Caroline's control. Suarez-Navarro does not have a good return to serve, and if you wear her down, she will come up with the errors. But it's going to be a long match. It's going to be a grinder, and I think it's going to be a very tough one. Svitolina, not so much the case. I think Svitolina is looking better and better with every round. I think getting into the second week was a big emotional hurdle for her, and I think now that she is there, I think that she's going to be tough to beat. Look, she's got this warrior tattoo, this warrior tiger tattoo on her thigh now. In the off season, she did this, as we mentioned. We're going to call it PG. We'll call it PG-rated expose in a magazine. Some say it's X-rated, but it was quite the revealing photo shoot. I haven't seen that Nike outfit in the stores that I saw in the magazine, but she is someone who really wants to start making herself known. She's tired of being under the shadow. She doesn't feel she's getting the attention she deserves, and she's been in the top 4 now for quite some time. She's won more titles on the tour than anyone else last year, but she doesn't think she's getting the credit, and she doesn't think she's getting the spotlight. So she is hungry for that. She wants it. She's deceptively competitive. She's deceptively good in coming back and sticking in a match. I don't think she moves as well as Caroline, or Suarez-Navarro for that matter. I don't think she has a lot of dimension to her game, and she's got a long way to go in developing that. But I think she's got the mental now and the consistency, and that was the key with Svitolina and the reason she is ranked as high as she is. She has been the most mentally consistent of anyone on tour. She has posted 150% every time she shows up. And to that degree, I think she's going to be tough to beat.
Well, what she has to do, though, is if she wants the respect, go out, get it done, get rid of Mertens, get to the semifinals of a Grand Slam for the first time, and get everybody off your back. And
look, Mertens is a good competitor
sure.
too, and as we mentioned, she won one of the tune-up events in Hobart, the same one she won the year before, by the way, where she finally made her big jump into the big leagues, as you would say. But Mertens is look, she's a kind of a cagey player. She's got some, she's got game, but Svitolina definitely is levels above that. And if she, rises to her, to what we know, Svitolina should be able to pull through that. She definitely has the serve, and she has enough pace on the ball where she should be able to control that match. And as we said, I think Svitolina is really out to prove herself, and she's gone under the radar in Melbourne, Greg. No one's really talking about her. And she was one of those late matches as well. When you get put on after the guys, you kind of get forgotten about. And I think the players have forgotten about her too, quite frankly, because there's been so much attention on Halep and Keys and other ones. But I think that this could work for Svitolina, and I still pick her to come out at half of the draw.
All right. So before I let you go, who do you? Let me get. We're beginning of week 2 here. We got 3 more shows to go. 2 more after this, actually, Wednesday and Friday. So I got to ask you, who do you like compared to who you liked in the beginning of the tournament? Your top players are still there.
I'm going to stick with everything I've picked so far. I'm going to stick with Svitolina to win the tournament with the Keys. You asked me who could be the outside the party crasher.
Yeah.
Who could win the title? I think Keys absolutely could win this title. So I think if she can beat Kerber, I think she will get to the final. And Svitolina Keys final, I think would be a really, really interesting match. We'd have a rematch of that U.S. Open battle where Keys was able to beat her in 3. So, but no, I'm going to stick with that. I am still going to stick with Roger. Obviously, I thought Kyrgios could have been the party crasher, not now.
Yeah.
So I think you have to go with Dimitrov, Grigor Dimitrov, as the party crasher, perhaps, because he was already there last year in the semis. He was right at the cusp. So it's not really someone to. It's not really a long shot, but he's certainly looking strong. If he doesn't have this letdown in the next round, that will be the interesting thing. Is if he can maintain this level, this mental level into the next round.
Yeah, one more potential letdown match to go, and then, like we said, he would have to possibly get past both Nadal and Roger in the same event to win it all. I'm gonna look. I like the winner of Kyrgios Dimitrov to win it, so I'll stick with Dimitrov. Even though I think we both agreed that Kyrgios would have had a better chance against Roger than Dimitrov, because Dimitrov doesn't know how to beat Roger, or at least yet. And I think the winner, Kerber Keys, wins it all. So I think that those two women are playing so well, and I'm starting to buy into this. Madison Keys maybe is going to actually get this done. If I'm going to bet on that match tomorrow night, I'm taking Keys. I'm leaning towards her right now.
Well, it's interesting how losses can really end up helping you, and I think that loss to Sloane at the U.S. Open really stuck with her, and that could have been really the turning point for her. And as you said, I think that she will not probably get that feeling to go away until she wins a Grand Slam and rights the wrong. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it all comes down to hunger and drive and how much you want it in the end with these Grand Slams in the second week. And their games are all there. And, we have some injuries, but everyone, Keys does seem healthy at this point, knock on wood. But yeah, I think that all those are good. I think it'll be interesting to see how they do in the accumulation of matches as well when you get to that final weekend.
And by the way, I put it usually about what I don't know, like $30, $40, $50 in my sportsbook account every couple of weeks, and then when it runs out, if it runs out, I replenish. So I had $1 left in my account last night. So I was looking at the tennis matches, and I was like, okay, this is the only way I could really make any money off a buck. So what do I like here? What possible upsets could I go for? So I went with 100-1 shot by taking three tennis upsets. And one is still going on today. But the two I picked yesterday were Sandgren and Chung.
Oh, my God.
And
good for you.
But I have to have Marin Cilic win in order to collect $100 on a dollar bet. So
you're living wild there, Greg.
Oh yeah, just imagine
living on the edge.
Yeah, imagine the days that come there I'll actually be able to put $100 down and feel good about those types of bets. But hey,
guess what? You may have been smart just to put $1 down, because I don't think Cilic is going to beat Nadal.
That's all I had anyway. Exactly.
You don't know. You never know. But
you never know.
I can't imagine that happening. So. It's been a lot of surprises this Australian Open, a lot of talk about injuries. Novak, of course, continuing to bring this up. We talked about how he was snubbed at the tournament, not being put on labor before this last match. And the truth is that I think the players are finally tired of hearing about all the injuries from the tournament directors, from the fans, from everyone. And I think they're starting to say, you know what, we're going to fight back. The reason we have injuries is because we're being run around this entire globe most of the entire year, and no one has our health in our best interest at heart, and no one's really thinking about that, and they just complain. And he said, quite frankly, we're tired of being injured. We're tired of being run around with no real control over all this. And so it'll be interesting to see if he continues to pursue this idea of a player union, an entity there to advocate for the players, whether it's the prize money for the Grand Slam percentage, which he brought up and Roger actually agreed with, or it's other issues as well, such as the scheduling, such as the commitment, such as the requirements that players have to, fulfill. It'll be interesting. And I think there is something to it, though, Greg. I think that there needs to be a much bigger choice in off-season for the players. I don't really believe there should be anything mandatory after the U.S. Open, because I think at this point, as the business has progressed, these tournaments go after the top players anyway. If they really want a player, they'll go after them, they'll pay the appearance fee, and they'll get them. They don't need to have the tours make them mandatory anymore. Mm-hmm. And this has really become the business between the players and the individual tournaments. And to that degree, I think that the tours have to start looking at what is in the best interest of our players and keeping them healthy and keeping them productive so that they don't have long 6-month injury timeouts. And I think that, when you see the injuries you have, and it's not just one or two, it's on a regular basis. And now perhaps we're going to have Novak out for a longer period of time, because he said that this elbow was not good, that this elbow may have been further damaged. And he may not be able to play for some time. You start to think about really what is the big picture here and trying to have a healthy sport.
And because I recall one of the analysts the other day talking about somebody who made some changes during the off season, and I was like, what off season? There isn't an off. Well, it made it sound like there was a 3-month break, which is exactly where it should be. It's like, what, 2-3 weeks? That's your off season. So it is kind of funny when players have to try and change things in their game from one season to the next, and all they have is basically a month, if that.
Right, if that, exactly. I mean, it's really just a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, usually when you really get down to it. But, the tournaments will say, look, you have to manage your schedule, you have to pick and choose, you shouldn't play as many tournaments and take the checks at the smaller events. You really should just be focused on the big ones like Roger is. It's quality of wins, not quantity. And so they have their argument too, but I believe that the tours have to be the bigger person in this and think about the long-term future. You cannot have your top stars off for 6, 7, 8 months and expect to build a tour with such unreliable names. And so that's where I think they have to start to say, okay, what can we do better? How can we address this in a more productive way? Or I think Novak may just, in fact, get his lawyers, which he had in Melbourne, and go, put together some entity to deal with this.
Yeah.
But that will be interesting to see if anything comes out of that moving forward.
And I do want to applaud ESPN last night because I really don't like some of the coverage early on in these big events when you got to watch Roger demolish somebody for 3 hours and these other really great matches are going on. But I like what they did yesterday. You had those 2 exciting tiebreakers going on at the same time, Sangren and Chung, and they had the split screen for a great part of it. And that was good. I hadn't seen them put that together before. And that was nice to see because here's something I kind of understand, but I don't. I mean, I get why they don't. I get why they want to do everything live, and especially with technology today. But I got to tell you, I mean, I would think that the average person, if they're in their homes, can figure out a way to block out any way of getting live scores, if they don't want to hear them. Because trust me, I can do that. So I would think that maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if you've got more than one really good match going on or a tiebreaker that you don't want to miss, but you did miss because you were looking at another match. Why don't you just, after the other match is on a break, why don't you say, okay, let's go back and now we're going to go over to this match. We're going to watch the tiebreaker that took place 5 or 10 minutes ago. Not telling anybody what the score was. I mean, everything's got to be live. And at the same every second, every minute. I mean, I understand why they're doing it. I get it, but I don't think it. I think they should try once in a while to try to get everything in to say, hey, you know what, we can't get it all.
Well, you can see it on replay if you want to in the morning. I mean, there is replays. ESPN also is replaying some matches. So you can see that. I think that they're trying to do everything live. As you said, the split screen was, they were able to accommodate 2 great tiebreakers. So I think that is terrific. I think their coverage has been good. They have been skipping around to a lot of courts. They're trying to give everyone, what they want, and they're trying to please everyone. So I think they've done a good job at that. I think we are getting to see, most of the matches at most of the crucial times. And, now, of course, in the second week now we get to the quarters. It's just going to be one at a time. There will be no, most of the matches will just be on labor now, one after the other, so you don't have that issue. But, no, I think ESPN has done a great job. I think they've done a great job of covering it. And Tennis Channel as well. They both have, put out a great effort.
All right, Andrea. So we'll talk to you again on Wednesday.
Greg, you can take your iPad out and put the the streaming on one and the other on the TV.
I know.
Just saying.
I know. Well,
that iPad has become very handy.
I know. It's matter of fact, even on DirecTV, they do have the additional matches you can watch, so that is available. Okay, so Andrea, we'll talk to you on Wednesday when we've got semi-final matches to talk about.
Fantastic.
All right, that's Andrea Land. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to another Australian Open edition of Prime Sports Tennis. And again, we're back on Wednesday for the semifinals, Friday for the finals. Thanks again for tuning in to Andrea Leanne's Prime Sports Tennis Australian Open Shot Clock podcast on the Prime Sports Radio Network.
tag, you know that